Sorry, I think Nigel Farage is living rent-free in the Labour government's head. This is only a week after they put him on the same side as Jimmy Savile over the online safety bill.
Yeah, that didn't go down too well from either, did it?
Defense Secretary just branded Farage a Putin apologist live on air. Is this the smear that finally blows up in Labour's face? Watch the fallout.
Just before we let you go, Minister, in an earlier interview you did this morning, you called Nigel Farage a Putin apologist. You can't be serious, can you?
Some of the statements that Nigel Farage has said in the past have sought to explain what Putin does, has sought to explain what Russia does. This is the moment, above all, when Putin is talking to Trump in Alaska, when the pressure must be on Putin to demonstrate that he is serious about peace, to scale back, not escalate, as he has been, the attacks on Ukraine. And we really require all political voices, including from Reform and Nigel Farage, to weigh in as strong as possible, condemning Putin, condemning the invasion in Ukraine, and we have not had that.
OK, look, we've been told that we have to leave it there from your side, but we appreciate your time, Minister. Thanks very much indeed. You. I should point out, this is...
Thank you very much.
This started, actually, 12 months or so ago, when people started saying Farage was an apologist, because what he was saying was the expansion of NATO, the expansion of the EU was poking the Russian bear.
Yes.
And that was causing problems. Yeah. Nigel Farage said at the time the invasion of Ukraine was immoral, outrageous and indefensible. Putin was entirely wrong. But I've made it clear on multiple occasions over the last 10 years, if you poke the Russian bear with a stick, don't be surprised if he responds.
I'm sorry, I think Nigel Farage is living rent-free in the Labour government's head. This is only a week after they put him on the same side as Jimmy Savile over the online safety bill.
Yeah, that didn't go down too well from either.
No. John Healey's attempt to smear Nigel Farage as a Putin apologist is not just lazy politics. It is a deliberate distortion designed to silence anyone who dares question the West's reckless escalation with Russia. I have watched this tactic for years the moment you point out that NATO's relentless eastward push might provoke Moscow. The left brands you a traitor. Yet history is on Farage's side. Not Healey's. I remember when Bill Clinton's administration promised Moscow in the 1990s that NATO would not move 1 inch eastward beyond a unified Germany. George Kennan, the architect of Cold War containment, warned in 1997 that expanding NATO would be the most fateful error of American policy in the entire post-Cold War era. Even Robert Gates, Obama's defense secretary, admitted in his memoir that the West poked the bear by courting Ukraine. These are not fringe voices, they are pillars of the American foreign policy establishment. If statting this plain record makes Farage an apologist, then Kennan, Gates, and scores of Western diplomats must be Kremlin assets too. Healey claims Farage explains away Putin's invasion. That is false. Farage called the invasion immoral, outrageous, and indefensible. What he added, what the left refuses to hear, is that Western policy created the context. When the EU and NATO treated Ukraine as a geopolitical football, Moscow read it as an existential threat. A leaked 2008 U.S. Embassy cable from Kiev reported that Putin warned no Russian leader could stand idle if Ukraine joined NATO. The West ignored him. The 2014 Maidan coup, cheered on by Brussels and Washington, replaced a corrupt but elected pro-Russian president with a coalition that included open neo-Nazis like the Azov Battalion. Moscow's annexation of Crimea followed within weeks. Cause and effect are not apology, they are analysis. The left's sudden moral absolutism about Ukraine is especially rich given its silence on Yemen. Since 2015, the UK has licensed at least $23 billion in weapons to Saudi Arabia, whose bombing campaign has killed tens of thousands of Yemeni civilians. Labour and Tory governments alike approved those sales. Where was Healey's outrage then? Where were the BBC panels branding Saudi apologists as pariahs? The double standard is staggering. Healey also boasts that Labour will deliver the biggest increase in defence funding since the Cold War. I ask, to what end? Britain's army is smaller today than at any time since the Napoleonic Wars. We have more civil servants in the Modi than we have active-duty troops. Our Type 45 destroyers spend more time in port than at sea because we cannot afford spare parts. Yet we pump ever greater sums into a proxy war with a nuclear power while our veterans sleep on the streets. In 2022, the National Audit Office found that 6 of the UK prison population, roughly 4,500 inmates, are former service members, many suffering PTSD after tour in Iraq and Afghanistan. Labour's answer is more tanks for Ukraine and more hand-wringing about Russian aggression. I call that betrayal, not patriotism. I have spoken with former soldiers in Wetherspoons pubs across the Midlands who describe the same cycle they deploy. They watch friends lose limbs to IEDs. They come home to broken marriages and council house waiting lists. And then they watch politicians on television pledge another £1 billion to a country most Britons cannot find on a map. These men and women are not fools. They know they are being used as stage props in a morality play scripted by people who have never heard a shot fired in anger. Healey's crocodile tears over veterans ring hollow when Labour still refuses to abolish the hated pension abatement rule that claws back veterans' pensions if they take a civilian Modi job. The Royal British Legion has campaigned against this injustice for years. Keir Starmer promised reform in opposition. In government, silence. So much for backing our forces. Meanwhile, the same ministers who vilify Farage for appeasement roll out the red carpet for Iran's ayatollahs. Labour still clings to the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, which showered Tehran with sanctions relief even as its IRGC proxies murdered British soldiers in Iraq. In 2019, masked Iranian commandos seized the Stena Impero, a British-flagged tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. Our response? We begged Oman to mediate. That is the Healey doctrine: bark at Russia, bow to Iran. The left's real fear is not Putin, it is losing control of the narrative. Brexit, Trump, and now Farage have shown that ordinary people no longer swallow the foreign policy consensus peddled by the BBC, The Guardian, and the Davos set. When Farage says, "Don't poke the Russian bear," millions hear common sense. They remember the Iraq dossier, the Libyan humanitarian intervention that left slave markets in Tripoli, and the Afghan retreat that abandoned girls to Taliban fanatics. They know the same voices now clamoring for total victory in Ukraine cheered every prior disaster. I have no illusions about Vladimir Putin. He is an autocrat who imprisons dissidents and assassinates rivals. But I also have no illusions about the West's record. We toppled governments from Tehran to Santiago, armed jihadists in Afghanistan, and renditioned suspects to black sites. Moral clarity begins at home. If we want to stand against tyranny, let us start by freeing political prisoners in Belmarsh, restoring free speech on university campuses, and ending the scandal of veterans left to rot in prison cells. Healey's parting shot that Farage is living rent-free in Labour's head captures the panic. The party that once marched against nuclear weapons now demands we send long-range missiles to Kiev. The party that championed détente now cheers drone strikes deep inside Russia. Labour has become the war party, and it cannot forgive Farage for refusing to join the chorus. So I stand with Nigel Farage, not because I idolize him, but because he is right on the facts. NATO expansion provoked Russia. Endless escalation risks nuclear war, and our first duty is to British citizens, not the editorial board of the Washington Post. If that makes me an apologist, then the word has lost all meaning.